Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly discussion series that's hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. I'm your host, Wiam Nemo. And today, my guest is Vicki Dobbs. Hello, Vicki.
Hi, William. How are you?
I'm good. So you're in Arizona, right?
I am this week. Yes.
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 And Vicki is an author, artist, teacher, and guide. She has been weaving together laughter, grace, and gratitude, creating opportunities for people to explore deep personal change through experiential workshops, ceremony, and story, while encouraging them to explore the magnificence of their own beingness. Vicki, I'm so happy that you're here, and I'm so excited that I've been aware of your work for years. We've known each other for over a decade. And I'm so happy that you published a book called You First that kind of helps put together some of the things that you teach. But before we dive into that, I your title is a spiritual entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I want to know what led you to dedicate yourself to this type of work.
Well, I think that for me, I was blessed with a successful career in real estate. So when I retired, I wanted to create a business that was mission driven, message driven, and not so much monetarily driven. And so it gives me an opportunity to put the word, my truth, the stories that I have to share without worrying about um, how much to charge, how much to pay, how much to spend, how much to I need to make. And so when I can turn it back to spirit and remember that I'm spirit guided to be sharing my voice with the world, that often what comes through me is voiced by me, but not necessarily my words, that it is a divinely guided voice that I've been gifted to be able to listen to in silence when the time comes. So it's a spiritual business that lets me be me out in the world. I get to take all the masks off and I don't have to be something because I'm doing something. I just get to be me.
And so you have held writing and spiritual workshops for decades. How do your teachings help writers and other creatives?
Well, I think as a creative, there's more categories that you can call creative than you can probably list on a page. And writing is a tool for me. Once you are blessed to find your writing voice, your creative soul, then you can use it in all aspects of your work. So when I teach about making a drum, there's an aspect of drawing and writing on that drum to incorporate the messages it's gifting you and it's making. If I am teaching someone about painting their story or painting their dream, then words go into that process underneath the paint that incorporate the energy of those thoughts into a physical manifestation of something that's a reminder of what we learned.
Um, and some of these teachings in this book, this is your new book. First of all, before you tell us what's inside of here, how did it come about?
Well, I decided to take a course called Ebook in a Weekend. And I've been working on my legacy book called Get Off the Shelf for about 4 years. It comes and it goes, but it was gifted to me in a very visceral vision. I was walking down a hallway and some movement caught my attention. I looked up and to the left, and there I was sitting on the top shelf with my arms folded and my legs crossed and my knee bouncing up and down. And I looked down at myself and said, "Get me the hell off this shelf." And that was a very powerful message for me. It was me telling me that I had set myself aside in service to all that I did and that I had lost who I actually was. So putting me first and writing and Get Off the Shelf was just pulling a chapter out, and it was just going to be a little ebook. It was a practice course, and it took on a life of its own and became its precursor to Get Off the Shelf. It wanted out there first. So it got out there first.
Yeah, I love like the exercises that you ask us to do. You know, this is something I totally relate to, is getting sucked into other people's drama. That was actually one of my biggest challenges when I was trying to um, heal some traumas, and then also to kind of look and take my writing and more seriously. And this was from many years. I found that drama was a big thing that I didn't even realize. I hadn't given it that much of importance. But you say, you talk about being sucked into drama and setting ourselves aside. That's, I think this is like one of the first exercises. The first step toward meaningful change is awareness. Who controls your yeses? I mean,
That's a real big one.
yeah, yeah.
I jokingly tell people that when my first child was born, the doctor told me I developed a speech impediment. And I looked at him kind of shocked, and I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You lost the ability to say no." And
Yeah.
that's a real thing for people. When you put everything and everybody else in front of yourself, you're never saying no.
Yeah, and you only realize that, as you said, by becoming aware of it. Because, like in my case, until
Right.
I was doing the wheel, as I was doing one of the wheels, and drama came very clearly into being, and I thought, what is like you? We always or oftentimes assume it's more of a materialistic factor that's preventing us. Money, even time. Could be also more materialistic, but sometimes there's other deeper things. But from your observation, what are the biggest obstacles that keep people from having a balanced life or even a creative life, whatever it may be?
They did calendar time sex. They let grandkid come in, or something that a friend needs, or their job calls the next assignment, or you decide to go someplace and it wasn't in calendars. You set aside what you were going to do. It's
I'm losing your
living.
voice,
Living gets in
Vicki.
the way.
I'm losing your voice a little bit.
Okay.
Okay,
Not sure. I'll turn my volume up and sit a little closer.
okay, good. Yeah, so you were saying they put others' needs first.
I think that life gets in the way. If you don't calendar yourself, if you don't put you at the top of your priority list, then as more and more things are added to that list, you get pushed farther and farther down the list and ultimately on the shelf, where everything and everybody else takes precedence over you. And that's when you get lost. You lose you, who you are. It's not about what you do, it's about who you are.
Interesting. And you went through Lynn V. Andrews' 4-year mysticism school, and as I did, that's where we met.
Yes.
You were a mentor. You've been a mentor again for decades. I mean, you've been teaching for so long. You've been there for so many, and you've really I mean, for your introduction, you've done so much more. But on a personal scale, I've seen you change people's lives, and this has been
Thank
going
you.
on for decades. Yes, and it's been very touching, and I've been touched by you and your teachings. But those initial teachings that you went through, what impact did they have on your life?
Well, probably I would have to say my big aha moment was when I was reading Wind Horse Woman, and Lynn was climbing the mountain in Nepal, headed to a healer who was going to fix her. And she was getting weaker and weaker the closer she was, just so sure this person was going to heal her, make it all right. The world would be beautiful. And that message is about giving your power away to somebody else. And I had a dear friend who I had set on a pedestal. She hadn't asked for it. I did it. I perceived her to be better educated, a better steward of her finances, a giving person, and someone I aspired to be. And so I let her tell me what color clothes to wear, how to cut my hair, what I should say or do. Literally, I thought she was going to be my answer to a more successful, quote unquote, life. And that book gave me that big aha moment of how much my power I had given to her, and she'd never asked for it. So it wasn't fair to her, and it wasn't fair to me. And from that point on, I began to see the value of boundaries. I once told someone, stop the car, and I got out. And I turned around and looked at them and I said, never again do you have my permission to speak to me like that. Because I didn't have a clue what boundaries were. So I have to thank the school for teaching me about boundaries and about how when you do and do and do for the people in your life, you're disempowering them. I realized how afraid my husband must have been because I managed all the money. His checks went into the bank. I wrote the checks, and he was always just not sure if we were okay. And we didn't talk about it. So imagine the fear that he lived with of what if I had just been, I'm trying to protect him. I'm trying to keep that stress from him by holding it to myself. And yet I disempowered his ability to understand how we were living and doing in the world. And that was such a big moment for me. So to use a biblical reference, I now do my best to teach people how to fish, and I've quit giving fish away.
Yeah, and that's a subtle thing that we credit to love. We will say, because we
Yes,
think that we love that person so much, even
right.
especially with our kids, that we do everything for them.
Yes,
We are disempowering them because we are not teaching them to become independent. And what happens when we are not around? They're going to be starting from scratch, and they'll kind of be on their own, kind of not knowing, which direction to go. But we label that as love, but it's very disempowering.
yes. It's robbing them of their experience, and that's the learning. So if we hold the container for them to grow up and let them experience everything they can, let them fall down and skin their knees. And, they'll learn that maybe running downhill at top speed when you get top heavy and fall over isn't the thing to do. And it's hard for us to let them let them fall, but when they have to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, they're the stronger for it.
And what life lessons that you learned from the school you still use today in your teachings?
Oh, I think compassion, kindness, caring. I think that recognizing that everything has not just value, but life. I teach a class called Conversations with Our Stone Teachers, talking to a rock. Well, there's a living entity in that rock. It just vibrates so much slower than us. We think it's just a rock. And so knowing that there is that light in all things animate and inanimate is a gift for me.
Yeah, those are the areas that are neglected. There's so much life around us that we
Yeah,
neglect, and we live in our thoughts. And there's also that focus just on the human aspect of
right.
the world, but there's so much more, and the more you learn, the more you see, and it's very exciting. It's kind of an exploration that prevents us. What I found is when I was exploring all these areas in nature, suddenly that feeling of, the boredom, a sense of depression, these just kind of come off because there's life everywhere and you can communicate it at any point. So
Right.
even when you're very alone, which could seem lonely, but it's no longer so lonely because you're not alone.
Right. Right. It's when I can, and that feeling overtakes me. And I think especially in these last couple of years with all of the chaos and dysfunction that has been floating in the air around us, it's easy to just stay put, to isolate. And I go out and sit with a tree and sometimes just listen to the rustle of the leaves. And because of the chaos, it's harder now to move into that place of stillness where you can hear something beside your own voice bouncing around in your head. So I think if I could tell anybody what they might do to help would be to find silence. There's such a gift in silence. And with all the technology, the constant faces in our screens, the televisions blaring 24/7, the cars blasting past, that if you can move into that place of silence and listen, there's so much magic out there and so many wonderful messages that are beyond the voice rattling around in our head 24/7.
Yeah, there was part of the fear during the pandemic when people had to isolate is that sense of aloneness, which, again, because of all the practices that we had gone through, to me, that wasn't, I saw the situation and it was startling, like, okay, what's going on? Where's this going? But at the same time, for me, that period of time was when I was using all these tools to, it's like, oh, I've been learning about this for many many years, and how to communicate with nature and how to be alone, and it just seemed, it wasn't as frightening when you
Right,
get to that point. And that's when you realize that at the end of the day you really just have your inner source to work with, and not to be given your power to these uh, places that you were attending, that you identified with yourself. you
right,
know People felt like their identity was shaken up, like, where do I belong, what do I do now? But that was a time to be in silent and to look within rather than to fall in the trap of fear.
right, right. And I put that in my book. I think that now's the time for us all to move within, to search within for our answers rather than searching outside of us for the stories that are out there shaping the world. And it starts with each one of us. Be the best that we can be each day. And it's contagious. Just like laughter and joy are contagious, so is the light that we carry into the world. And you know, the old saying, a candle loses none of its light in the lighting of another candle. So be your best and brightest, and you'll be contagious, and it will spread.
What would you say have been the biggest challenges in this journey of yours?
In the writing journey,
I guess the spiritual and the writing journey.
well, the spiritual journey is finding a spiritual practice and staying true to it. When I moved 2 years ago, the places that had become those little sacred corners in my house or the guest house or my rock gardens all went away because they all got packed up into boxes and moved. New environment, new space, not the same. And I have not recreated those sacred places. So for me, I started with one cotton tree in the yard beside my office. And that's as far as it's gotten, but that's a start of finding sacred space around me again. Um, for the writing journey, that's one of the gifts of the pandemic because it was shelter at home, and especially in California, which um, was very controlled. I didn't go anywhere. My husband did the shopping 3 days a week, and beyond that, and seeing our kids, that was our pod. And so writing became my refuge and my sanctuary. And writing is contagious. Once you start, if you're not careful, it just keeps going.
And what advice would you give our youth today?
Boy, respect. Respect everything and everybody around you. Be kind, be caring, be compassionate, be the best you that you can be, and work for everything that you want. When you learn to earn it, you'll learn to respect it. And it's like growing a tomato plant to enjoy the tomato. Just buying it at the grocery store doesn't teach you all that goes into growing a tomato. But when you reach onto that plant that you grew, that you nurtured, that you watered, that you worked for, and you're gifted that amazing little fruit, or maybe it's a vegetable, I can never remember, that tomato is sweeter than ever. So work hard. Don't be afraid to be you. I think that we in the past have taught our children to conform, and I think it's time to teach them and let them know that it's okay to be them, to be you first before you be for anybody else.
Vicki, I can have a whole show on this work ethic subject because,
Yes,
as you know, right now, many people are experiencing this because of the shift that happened because of the pandemic, and many people can't find people to work because
exactly. People
and
have forgotten about going to work. They got paid to stay home.
they got and and that sense. The sad part is the people needing to hire what they do, they end up stepping up to make up for everybody's being
Right.
missing, for other positions. And they get stronger, in my opinion, until somebody else comes along.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I do feel bad for the people that don't realize that they're not working, regardless of what the job might be in the period of transition, because it's not like you have to stay in one job all your life. But that resistance to work, there's a lack of appreciation of what work really means, what
I think
having
it's
a
a
job
learned
and the
behavior.
discipline. It's a learned
Yeah,
behavior.
it
I'm
is.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because we can talk about spirituality morning, day, and night, but without the ethics of work, without putting in the work, it doesn't manifest.
You don't end up with a book unless you spend time on the keyboard. And then everything that comes after that is huge, but it never becomes that piece in your hands, that paycheck, if you want to, unless you put in the work. You do the initial writing, and then you do your initial editing, and then you do your proofing, and then you design a cover, and then you write the back cover, and then you talk to people, and then you share it. And eventually, if you work at it hard enough and stay with it, you will end up with a product in your hand. So whether that's a paycheck or a book or a painting or a photograph, it's, people say let go and let God, but God gave us two hands. And we have to use those two hands and the brilliant mind that He gave us and the strength of the bodies that we are gifted to manifest that here on this earth. And that means work. You have to plant the seeds. You have to water it. You have to pull the weeds around it. You have to nurture that plant, that gift, that book, that story, that painting, that picture. I get passionate. I'm sorry. I
No,
talk
I
a
love
lot.
this topic myself, because people say, how do you do all that you do? And I do love work. Before I had to learn that rest was important. So
Yes.
I learned that, but when I learned that, I just learned how to balance things out. So it wasn't about stop working. It was about, how do I balance my life? And I want to share a story about the ancient Mesopotamians. So the Sumerians, they have a lot of, when I give a tour of the museum, I talk about how the Sumerians and the statues and statuettes that they found of men, women, children, like they had these whole families pictured. They were all standing in prayer form like this. And they always gave credit to the higher being for their work. They didn't take credit for it themselves. But one thing that they did for my research, what I found is that the way for them to show gratitude to the creator was by working. So
Yes.
not so they think them verbally through writing by saying this work was, such and such, God is behind this work, that supported this work, but it was they're working so much, and they created the cradle of the civilization because of that they're giving back to the universe.
Right.
That's how important work for them, and they were able to build what they did. So yeah, work is a very, very important thing. And like I said, I'm very glad that you brought it up, and I know now you're even working on your next book. So tell us
I
about your next book.
Well, you first came from a chapter that I had tentatively titled Nurturing You in my legacy book, which is Get Off the Shelf. And I had this very visceral vision of myself walking down a hallway lined with books when my attention was drawn up to my left, and there I sat on the top shelf, arms folded, legs crossed, foot bouncing up and down, just disgusted. I looked down at me and heard myself tell me, me the hell off of this shelf. And at that time in my life, I was very busy in a lot of aspects of my life. I built my business volunteering. So rather than selling houses, I simply participated in the community as the realtor that I was. So I was very active on the board for the Foundation for Clovis Schools, the Police Activities League, which I love teaching kids to canoe. I was involved with the board of directors in the Chamber of Commerce and being an ambassador. And it was all volunteer work, which my mother taught me at a very early age to get involved with, and giving back. And I think that that's a huge aspect of putting yourself first, that when you give, so shall you receive. So give to yourself, put yourself at the top of your priority list, and you position yourself to receive everything that you want.
So Vicki, what are your goals in 5 years from now?
Oh, 5 years from now, I'd love to be on the road once a month, traveling, come to Michigan and teach with you
Oh, I love
and
it.
do
Oh
some
my gosh, you
courses,
just reminded
classes.
me. We
And
we had put that intent somewhere. Okay,
yes,
we need to
yeah,
follow up. That's a good goal. Okay, Vicki, you need
we
to
were on the precipice when COVID hit. And, I've taught in Canada a few times, and I love to travel. So if I can take what I love to teach and toss it into going places I've never been, man, I'd be a happy camper. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Ireland. I want to teach in Australia. I keep telling Kim I'm coming. So I do. I want to travel and teach. I love speaking. I love sharing this story at no matter what age you are. When I mentored in the school, I had an apprentice that was 73, and she said, I've got to get it right this time. And here I am approaching 73. And I'm like, okay, guys, I think I got it. Now I just want to tell
somebody
the world.
here, Vicky, and somebody here says, "Don't forget Israel. You need to visit it." You have people from all over the
Oh,
world. I think.
that's probably Lisa. Yes, Israel. Okie doke. We'll do a drum making and you can teach
Take me
me to
along,
dance.
okay? I want to go there. I've been to Israel. I loved it. So you take me along, okay?
We'll Hey, let's go as a group. Let's take a group of teachers, and rather than one person teach to a group and spend the rest of the day having fun, let's take a bunch of teachers and go sit in circle with all the wonderful people around the world and share not just the beauty of who we are and what we do, but in circle find out about the beauty of them and who they are and what they do. I mean, that just gives me goosebumps.
First of all, I have to say that we met through Lynn School. Amazing, amazing people from all over the world that I'm
Right.
so honored to have met them. They've been so helpful, and I do what I do to give back because of what you guys have taught me. By the way, the importance of that, and And it has been a blessing and a reward for me as well. So that whole concept of giving and receiving, I've learned the balance of it because I was always one way or to the other too much. I was one extreme and then I went to the other extreme, and then it's like balancing it out. But after this talk, I'm definitely gonna uh, what do you call it? Renew my passport.
Yes.
I'm gonna renew my passport, and we have to somehow find a way to reconnect because there's amazing people around the world doing amazing work, and we are honoring them through this show. We are honoring
Yes.
women for Women History Month because they do work all over the world in different ways. And we know that while we honor our heritage, our Chaldean heritage, that it's a combination of many amazing people doing wonderful work that really matters and touch each other's hearts, which
Right.
it transcends religion, nationality, everything else. So I'm so honored that to have you here today. And
Heart to heart.
it's heart to heart, and I so look forward for when you do come to Michigan. Okay, we'll have a bunch of programming for you.
We'll have fun.
We'll
That'll
have
be
fun.
wonderful. Thank you so very much for allowing me to put you first out into the world through your show and introduce Get Off the Shelf. And you know, I could just leave this one message to everybody is remember, when you put yourself first, you gift the world with the best of you, not just what's left of you.
Thank you. And your book is available on Amazon, correct?
Everywhere good books are sold.
Okay. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a
And
wonderful
you can find me or sign up for my newsletter at vickidobbs.com. VICKIDOBBS.com.
Thank
Join
you.
the You First Revolution on Facebook.
Yes, yes. There's a lot. Just go and visit her website and you'll see many wonderful things. So thank you again, Vicki. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you,
weekend,
William.
everyone.
You're a blessing in our world. Thank you.